wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa min yudlil fala hadiyalah. Allahumma sholli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi ajma'in. The Honorable President of LITA, Ibu Prof. Mainarni Susilawati, and then the Honorable Presenter, Ibu Hasnul Johar, PhD, and also Pak Ribut Wahyudi, PhD, and then the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Let me introduce myself first. Yeah, my name is Lita Untari, and today I will be moderating for this first LITA Academic Forum. First of all, I'd like to welcome to you all to the first academic forum. In this occasion, we will have a presentation from the literature and also educational studies, yeah, with our two great speakers, yeah, in fact, yeah. But before the discussion, there will be a speech from our president, Prof. Mainarni, and maybe let's slightly give the time for Prof. Mainarni to open this forum, yeah, this first forum. And Prof. Mainarni, time is yours.
Thank you, Bu Lili. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in amma ba'd. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bu Lili, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Clearly?
Clearly.
It's a bit crowded here. Okay. First of all, let's thank to God for the health and the opportunity for us today in this afternoon for joining this LITA Academic Forum. This is the really the first activity for us to do this year. So thank Bu Hasnul for initiating this forum, and also Pak Ribut for the kindness to be the presenter of the forum. Today's session offers two different topics, which brings its weight at its own. The first topic concerning the ideology will be presented by Bu Hasnul. This topic can be a door for the researcher in this particular area to be able to uncover what's behind political activity or events, in this case FBI, even though it's reflected in a novel. Is it novel? I hope it is. At least it's a literary work. As we know that literary work represents our daily life, therefore whatever we have, whatever we found, whatever we find in any literary work, it actually also represents our life. And just in many cases, literary work also brings much sharper messages to deliver, because of the openness in terms of using particular figurative languages. Therefore, the messages can be much more effective and efficient at its own. Thank you, Bu Hasnul, for bringing this particular issue. And Pak Ribut will also cover how the discursive construction, which also consists with the ideology within travel context, even though the settings are quite different, but actually the two presenters can come to a particular point and shows the rich thread string of the two topics to come to a certain point. In this case is ideology. So today I think the forum will give us a much richer perspective at the end, and hope it can enrich our perspective and also stimulate further research. And concerning the LITA program, I think this is the beginning of the new pengurus, ya, because we start this period just recently. Therefore, I invite all the audience to join LITA. Let me use bahasa Indonesia in this case. Jadi untuk Bapak Ibu yang akan mendaftarkan menjadi anggota LITA bisa mengunjungi website yang sudah didesain oleh teman-teman divisi keanggotaan. Di sana nanti Bapak Ibu akan mendapatkan link untuk melakukan registrasi dan juga persyaratan-persyaratan yang dipenuhi. Lalu mengapa harus menjadi anggota LITA? Karena LITA merupakan salah satu asosiasi ya, yang dikelola oleh Kemenak, yang dalam hal ini juga mempunyai keleluasaan untuk melakukan kegiatan-kegiatan akademik, dan divisi akademik sangat aktif ya untuk mendesain kegiatan-kegiatan yang bermanfaat untuk Bapak Ibu, bukan hanya terkait dengan pengembangan program studi, tapi juga terkait dengan pengembangan program studi sebagai kelembagaan. Karena itu nanti kita juga akan membahas bagaimana pengembangan kurikulum, bagaimana kemudian asosiasi ini memberikan sumbang saran untuk pengembangan prodi, bahkan juga bagaimana menyiapkan akreditasi terkait dengan peraturan-peraturan baru untuk melaksanakan akreditasi program studi. So in that sense, then please join us. Mudah-mudahan nanti Bapak Ibu bukan hanya mendapatkan manfaat dari sisi akademik, tetapi juga mendapatkan pencerahan dalam pengelolaan program studi. Saya kira ini di chat nanti sudah ada link yang bisa Bapak Ibu gunakan untuk mendaftarkan diri menjadi anggota LITA. Ibu Hasnul, I think that's the things that I can share. Please enjoy the forum this evening. Thank you again for the organizer, in this case divisi akademik yang bekerjasama dengan Prodi Sastra UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. Thanks again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay.
Bu Hasnul, do apologize Pak Ribut because I cannot join the session unfortunately. Ini saat ini sedang ada rapat pimpinan di UIN Maulana Malik Ibrahim. Jadi mohon izin nanti Bapak Ibu ya, saya harus segera leave the session. Thank you. Enjoy the session.
Okay. You're welcome, Prof. Mainarni. Thank you very much for the great motivation for us to hold this first forum, and for the audience, ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, I'd like to introduce our two great speakers. Today we will have discussion, we will have presentation from the literature and also educational studies. From the literature, we will have our speakers, Ibu Hasnul Johar, PhD. Ibu Hasnul is the head of the department and senior lecturer in English at Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. Bu Hasnul is a Fulbright recipient. She completed her MA degree in English from Central Michigan University in 2013. And then after that, she also completed her PhD studies in English from University of Exeter for an Indonesian endowment or LPDP in 2019. And then Bu Hasnul looks like interested in researching in women's literature. Yeah? And her recent article is The Crossroad of America in Muslim Women Fiction with the project Muse, The Crossroad of America and sorry, I do not wear the glass. Yeah. This saya sebentar. Maaf sekali saya tidak pakai kacamata jadi tulisannya kecil-kecil, maaf ya. And then for today, Bu Hasnul will discuss about Muslim racism, ya, anti-Muslim racism in the US, which is portrayed in Halabi's novel. And I think anti-Muslim racism is always interesting to be discussed. And Bu Hasnul today is proposing a model for women's literature of the Ummah in exploring the unique stories written by Muslim women from around the world. Yeah. So the discussion must be very interesting. Yeah. And then after that, the next presenter will be Pak Ribut. Yeah. Pak Ribut is also PhD. However, Pak Ribut is the PhD from Australia. The second presenter, Pak Ribut is also the head of English Letters Study Program from UIN Maulana Malik Ibrahim Malang. Pak Ribut is a Master of Education from University of Sydney, and he completed his Magister in 2010, and then he completed his TESOL in PhD in TESOL, yeah, in 2018 from Victoria University from New Zealand. So we have two very great speakers, and for the first speaker, Bu Hasnul will have for about 15 minutes to present the articles, and then the next part Ribut will also have 15 minutes. Yeah. After that, we will continue to the question and answer session. However, if you have the audience, you have any question from the presenter, please use the chat feature in this Zoom application. Yeah. You can write your question via chat feature, and then I will on the last session I will read out loud your question, and I will ask the presenter to answer the question. And then now to make the time effective, I will ask Bu Hasnul to lead the discussion for the first presenter. Okay, Bu Hasnul, time is yours, please.
Yeah. So while I'm presenting, would any committee help me to accept any participant who want to join us today? So I can focus on my presentation.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, because only 15 minutes, let's start with my, I would like to show you this novel. So this is Once in a Promised Land by Laila Halabi. So how many of you, please raise your hand. familiar with this novel. So this is published in 2007. So Laila Halabi is, I will share your, Laila Halabi was born in Beirut to a Jordanian father and American mother. So she grew up mostly in Arizona, have traveled a fair amount, and have lived for bits of time on the East and West Coast, the Midwest, and Jordan and Italy. Her education includes an undergraduate degree in Italian and Arabic, and 2 master's degree in Arabic literature and in counseling. So right now, that's why she currently works as an outreach counselor for the University of Arizona College of Public Health. So she published about 5. This is the name is My Name on His Tongue. Her most recent publication is a memoir in poems, and then her novel West of Jordan, winner of PEN Margin Award. And this novel that I'm going to talk today is Once in a Promised Land, published by so this Once in the Promised Land, a Barnes and Noble Discover Great New Author Selection, also named by the Washington Post as one of the 100 best work of fiction for 2007. So these 2 novels both published by the Phenomena Beacon Press. Besides fiction and poetry, she also writes stories for children, including a book entitled Track in the Sand. So this is her first serious writing project and the one closest to her heart, as it is a collection of Palestinian folktales that she gathered from children during the year she was living in Jordan and studying folklore on a Fulbright scholarship. So her most recent project is a novel that has one of its main characters as American soldier coming home to the United States after completing 3 tours in Iraq. The writing and researching to this novel has led to the formation of creative writing class for veterans. So her current project is about veteran, but today that the novel Once in a Promised Land is about the FBI. Why I'm interested to FBI? Because for me, when I'm reading literature, I like to relate with any issues, current issues in our life, with politics, society, religion, and culture. And yeah, let's see if any one of you agree with my argument that how I investigate this novel. So my paper examined how Halabi's Once in Promised Land utilizes the FBI trauma and terrorist hunting license to challenge U.S. anti-Muslim racism by engaging with post-colonial studies with the frameworks of racial studies and 9/11 studies. So my paper investigates how Halabi's novel explore U.S. domestic sphere, especially the FBI, which involves U.S. households such as love affairs, domestic trauma, and car accidents, to vary the debates in 9/11 studies, which mainly focus on U.S.-centric trauma. Indeed, Halabi novel used the FBI, which is an international agent, as in controlling in U.S. domestic problems, to illuminate how anti-Muslim racism infects and policies U.S. nationality. So thus, Halabi text not only challenge the limited scope of the discussion surrounding 9/11 debates, which center on domestic trauma, but also undermines anti-Muslim racism through both the exploration of the domestic genre and the metaphor of the terrorist hunting license, as it interrogates U.S. domestic international surveillance of U.S. Muslim communities. Significantly, this paper can be the model for women's literature of the Ummah, exploring unique stories written by Muslim women from around the world. In this case, Laila Halabi is American Jordanian. If you read the book Richard Gray, so I start with discussing Richard Gray. how Richard Gray investigates at least 4 9/11 novels, including the novel that I'm talking about today is Laila Halaby, Once in Promised Land, and the other book is Lauren Adams Harbor and Gray, Brandia Self-Storage, and Khalid Hussein, The Kite Runner. So he argued that in these novels describe the experiences of immigrants in the US immediately after the 9/11 attack or war and terror. So, however, in my opinion, Gray argues that these novels are flawed because difference is diminished. A crisis is distance, quote, yeah, a crisis is distance or even suppressed by being accommodated to familiar and often conventional narrative structures, end quote. So, for example, Halaby's narrative focuses on the life of one couple, Jassim Haddad. He is a Jordanian hydrologist, and his wife, Salwa. Salwa is a banker. She was born in America, grew up in Jordan, and is Palestinian origin. So even though she was living in Jordan and had roots in Palestine, Salwa, quote, feels tied to America by invisible threats even before she went to live there, end quote. So this bond can be seen through the way the omniscient narrator depicts Salwa as having consumed US popular culture, exemplified in the America, quote, America of Disneyland and hamburgers, Hollywood, and the Marlboro Man, end quote. So indeed, Halaby's novel raises the issue of trauma faced by this couple in the aftermath of 9/11 attack, in particular for her male protagonist, Jassim, who is accused of having links with terrorism just because he looks like an Arab. So Halaby's narrative begins to falter under its emphasis on the domestic and melodramatic. It reveals how distant political events can unsettle normalcy, including the quietest zone of personal and domestic lives. Indeed, Halaby novels explores the idea of personality and domesticity instead of global matters, as Gray argues. However, these domestic spheres can be used as a way to challenge issue of globalization, such as terrorism and Islamophobia, as my paper seeks to address. So I argue that Halaby texts undermine US racism, especially anti-Muslim racism, through the exploration of domestic spheres such as Jassim car accident, Salwa bodily and emotional trauma, like she has miscarriage, she got assaulted and harassment, and the metaphor of the terrorist hunting license. Indeed, terrorist hunting license is the term on a sticker, which is used by both Halaby characters and also in reality some American extremists to allow them to hunt or exclude US Muslim characters from US belonging, especially after 9/11 attacks. And in the novel, Evan, a white American extremist, and his gang used the sticker terrorist hunting license on the skateboards that they ride on the street where Jassim is driving his car. Indeed, Evan rides on his skateboard, hitting Jassim's car, which has caused the car accident and involves the FBI. So these domestic experiences have been used to invade and policy anti-Muslim racism through the country and beyond. This domesticity works to decentralize 9/11 as the defining trauma of the novel, challenging the notion of trauma as US-centric. And Halaby's Once in a Promised Land not only utilized the FBI agent, but also used metaphor of terrorist hunting license to challenge anti-Muslim racism. So this metaphor represent, I agree that this can represent vigilantism. Vigilantism is a popular representation of terrorism and surveillance of Muslim and Arab population. According to David Koppel in 2019, defined vigilantism as a quote, group activity. And in the modern United States, the term vigilant is sometimes applied to non-citizens who take the law into their own hands to seek personal revenge on criminals or conduct a private crusade against crime. But the term is not properly applied to individual action, end quote. In fact, in the novel, Evan in his gang used a sticker stated a terrorist hunting license or THL to hunt Muslims who are often associated with terrorism. By creating the terrorist hunting license, Evan sets himself up over Muslim who can be the target of his hunting by being primarily associated with acts of terrorism. Thus, Jassim can be hunted like a wild animal because he appears to be an Arab, and thus the THL is used to allow anti-Muslim groups like Evans exclude Jassim from US belonging. And this terrorist hunting license sticker legitimate Evan to hunt Jassim, who is suspected as terrorist. Ironically, this sticker finally witnessed Evan's death after hitting Jassim's car. So this traffic accident represents the 9/11 attack, which is mainly seen as US-centric trauma without considering the complexity of 9/11 debates, translation, and the imaginative challenge of what Pankaj Misra's called in 2007 as facing the Islamic others. So facing Islamic others actually can be used as a challenge that Anglo-American writers have responded to only in very limited ways. So this challenge became all more urgent after 9/11 Commission report in 2004. It was published and concluded that Muslim words hostility toward us and our value is limitless, end quote. So to the best known novel by, this is the example I can give you how the Anglo-American writers that feature the Islamic others. For example, John Updike's. If you read John Updike's Terrorist and Don DeLillo Falling Man, published John Updike Terrorist 2006 and Don DeLillo 2007, the same with this novel I'm talking about. So while DeLillo is a connoisseur of political conspiracy and historical trauma, and a pioneer among writers taking out terrorists of danger and rage, Falling Man retreats like J. McCartney, if you know this novelist, J. McCartney and Ken Kalfus, to the domestic life. So for Misra critique echoes Grace. DeLillo quote elliptical, fragmented narrative depicts the shattered lives of a couple of New York and the emotional and existential struggles of 9/11 survivors, end quote. So despite depicting the 9/11 hijackers, DeLillo remains strangely incurious about their past and their societies and fails to analyze in the light of the biggest ever terrorist atrocity, the origin and appeal of political violence. So this is why ultimately DeLillo's novel relies on received notion about Muslim rage. So my argument to challenge these imaginative narratives toward the Muslim world. So my paper offers an alternative way to understand the 9/11 novels by considering a novel written by a woman from Middle Eastern Muslim background as opposed to Anglo-American authors who likely to represent Muslim in reductionist ways such as Updike's Terrorist and then DeLillo's Falling Man. And to challenge these reductionist views of Muslim, it is important to investigate the novels by focusing on the complexity of the facing the Islamic other, as Misra argues previously. So those Halabi's novel challenge the Islamic other by describing the Muslim protagonist as facing various traumatic events when living in the US. So this trauma is highlighted when Jassim feels anxious about being put in prison. That leads him to create several anagrams, which represent his chaos feelings, thinking as a result of being traumatic interrogated by the FBI. And the omniscient narrator describes when the FBI agents, Dan Fletcher and Agent Noelle James, frequently investigate Jassim regarding the 9/11 attacks. When Jassim calls the FBI agent, he notes that, quote, FBI could become FIB or FIB, and Noelle James could be the Lemon Sea Jail, end quote. So we can see here that Jassim feels scared and unsettled as he might be put in jail because of Bella's accusation of him being involved with terrorism. Like a prisoner, Jassim has no power to fight against the FBI's intimidation, but mainly playing with the word of FBI, the FBI become FIB. And if we refer to John Updike in 2006, which is some largely circulated cliche in his fictional accounts of terrorists. Indeed, Updike seems keen to optimize his research by visiting, quote, the website of Quranic pseudo-scholarship, which invokes the rising virgin controversy by depicting his character as fanatical Muslim who muses that the substitution of virgin with dry foods would make paradise significantly less attractive for many young men, end quote. So here Updike continuously pays attention to his, quote, his own fuzzy prose by attempting to evoke the puritanical zeal of his characters, end quote. So in doing so, Updike represents his protagonist Ahmad as a silly radical Muslim, as a devious. The guts of men shock hugely, and the monstrous buttocks of women sue so painfully as they treat the broad wall in the swollen sneakers, end quote. So both Delilo and Updike struggle to define cultural otherness and fail to understand that belief and ideology have been covered by gaudy fantasies about virgin. So this text complicates facing the Islamic other by using language, particularly Arabic terms, names such as Jassim Salwa and Salwa names, which function to challenge superficial views of the Islamic other, which is explored in much more Anglo-American writings such as Updike and Dolilo works discussed previously. So to end this paper, so I can refer again the significance of the metaphor of terrorist hunting license used to emphasize how the FBI have nationally and internationally legalized their illegal action of persecuting Jassim or Muslim more broadly. Thus, a license, which means to give a person permission to do something, allow the FBI to interrogate Jassim about his reaction to the event of September 11. So this is the quote, how Agent Fletcher interrogate Jassim, quote, would your reaction have been different if it had been expected, end quote. So here the FBI agent is prejudiced against Jassim and assume that he is one of the radical group members. In this sense, the text uses irony by transforming the role of the FBI from the protector of American citizens to become an official front for US surveillance. When I read the Guardian report on Muslim surveillance that, quote, the effort crossed into New Jersey, where the department collected intelligence and ordinary people at most restaurants and schools starting in 2002. The surveillance extended across at least 20 mosques, 14 restaurants, 11 shops, 3 schools, and 2 Muslim student groups in New Jersey alone, end quote. So here, this national surveillance has since moved to a global level. James Renton argued that, quote, the global surveillance order is targeted primarily at Muslims. Its expansion of state surveillance system and legislation into the West since 9/11 has taken place into response to Islamist terror, end quote. So here, this novel, Jassim car accident, being investigated by the FBI, is one example of how national surveillance is linked to the global system, and the FBI embodies both national and global surveillance initiatives. So this embodiment can be seen through the way the FBI not only interferes with Jassim car accident, but also accused Jassim as supporting terrorists after he transferred money to Jordan, regardless of helping her family. So in this sense, this novel questions the FBI's role in expanding anti-Muslim racism with the US and beyond. Yeah, I think that's all, and hopefully it will invite more discussion. Yeah, do you agree with some of my argument? How I engage with politics instead of only pure of just reading literature. I think that's all. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you, Bu Hasnul. And then before we come to the next presenter, I'd like to read a very brief CV of Pak Ribut Wahyudi. Pak Ribut Wahyudi, PhD, has written several articles and international articles. He has reached international publisher, and it seems that especially myself have to learn much from Pak Wahyudi. Pak Wahyudi has written, for example, his articles are the first transnational tech-com practitioner, multiple subjective and critical classroom negotiation in Indonesian university context. It is published by Bristol Multilingual Matters publisher. And then the next, the article is the discursive construction of several key themes in the national policies and curriculum document of two Indonesian universities and their possible ecological reconstruction. It is published in the Springer publisher. And Pak Wahyudi will discuss about this one in this occasion. And then the other article is about critically negotiating British and American Englishes, voices from Indonesia. It is published in Sunway University Press. And then the last one, the international article written by Pak Wahyudi is using critical applied linguistics to negotiate the teaching and dominant Englishes. It will be published by Routledge. So there are many articles, many international articles written by Pak Wahyudi, and Pak Wahyudi seems very productive, and we can learn many things from Pak Wahyudi. And then let's welcome our second presenter. Pak Wahyudi will have 15 minutes from now on until 15 and 5. And please, Pak Wahyudi, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Is my voice clear to Hasnul, to Lily? Can you hear my voice clearly? Bu Hasnul, Bu Lili?
Halo, kurang keras ya suaranya, Pak. Yang kencang dikit,
Iya, gimana Bu Hasnul? Sudah jelas?
Masih pelan ya?
Oh,
Nggak
iya.
pakai mic kali, coba tes. Tes.
Cek.
Masih lembut.
Sebentar ya. Saya
Mikrofonnya mungkin itu.
Iya, mikrofonnya kemana itu?
Perlu pinjam mikrofonnya Bu Hasnul.
Ini nih, tak pinjamin nih. Udah tak kirim lewat WA ya.
ya ini apa ganti lab ya? Apa ganti
Ganti ke Pak Edi itu, pindah duduk sebentar Pak Edi, minggir dulu.
Ya, saya di lab Bu Hasnul. Saya coba komputer lain gimana? Ini di lab.
Boleh pindah.
Ya.
Boleh deh sambil Pak Ribut pindah, boleh deh question for me. Biar cepat
Ya.
nih Pak Ribut, pindah dulu ke Pak Edi, Roger. Bu Lili, satu question for me kalau ada. Ini di stop dulu Pak Ribut.
Okay, as we are waiting for the technical matters, now let's invite the question from the audience. If you have the question, you may write via the chat room, or you may ask the question directly. Okay, please, the audience. Is there any questions? Oke, silakan untuk yang bertanya bisa ditulis di chat room ataupun bisa disampaikan langsung ke sini karena discussing about racism should be very interesting, ya. Atau mungkin Pak Wahyudi sudah siap lagi? Pak Ribut? Mbaknya. Berikutnya. Okay, maybe Bu Hasnul can what we call Bu Hasnul can tell us about the phenomena especially in the novel of the novel written from the foreigner related to the Muslim affair in the United States.
Yeah, excellent question, Bu Lili. Yeah, this is why I'm writing this paper is also based on my experience after reading John Abbeck Terrorist and also Don DeLillo Falling Man. So how they tend to describe Muslim in reductionist views. And I don't like from the novel that how Updike describe most of the name of the taxi drivers are Muhammad. So it means that how they make we appreciate and we adore our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but the way they represent the name of Muhammad in reductionist views really hurt my feeling. So based on this unfairness and discrimination, the way the Western white Anglo-American tend to depict Muslim in this negative way, I try to write how Muslim women or Muslim themselves write about Islam or Muslim in order to challenge this misrepresentation. So that's why the background of my paper. Yeah, hopefully after Pak Ribut presentation, some of you will raise some question. You can ask me anything, even though very basic question about the novel. I'm happy to discuss literature and also a question to Pak Ribut. Ini Pak Ribut udah nongol, silakan Prof. Tes dulu, batuk.
Cek Bu Hasnul.
Mantap.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bu Lili, for the quite long introduction. This my presentation is actually a part of my big project on my dissertation, which I did and completed in 2018. It's one of the chapter, and then I modified and extended one of the chapter in my dissertation, and finally I got this modified version published in Springer. The title of my presentation is the discursive construction of TEFL key themes in the national policies and curriculum documents of 2 Indonesian universities, 1 multi-religious universities and 1 Islamic universities, and their possible ecological reconstructions. My dissertation actually also applies post-colonial and post-structural analytical framework. So there is a meeting point between my presentation and Bu Hasnul presentation, but it's in different context. My context is in applied linguistics, especially in English language teaching, while Bu Hasnul is on a literature. Introduction: Indonesia is a multicultural and multilingual country, and this is really important to consider that English teaching in Indonesia, which has been dominated so far by monolingual paradigm, which appreciates more native speakerism, which appreciates more ELT methods, ELT method imported from the West, for example, such as communicative language teaching in the past, and also grammar translation method, which we can read from one of the article by Darjo Wijoyo in 2000. And then, of course, this context, a multicultural and multilingual context of Indonesia should take an important role in shaping the teaching of English in Indonesian context, which is now, getting a momentum through plurilingual approach or multilingual movement. Next, Mbak Vinda. Yes, the status and characteristic of the 2 universities that I collected my data is an Islamic university under Ministry of Religious Affairs, and also multi-religious university, a university under Depdiknas, Kemendikbud. But in this presentation, the status and characteristic of Islamic university is not that too, and important, because what I'm discussing now is only the curriculum policy of the documents in the 2 universities. It has a very critical point when I discuss the subjectivity of the lectures, teaching English, teaching argumentative writing and cross-cultural understanding, which my PhD dissertation focused on, when the focus was on lecture subjectivity. But since now I'm discussing only the policy, so it does not have critical importance. The next slide, Mbak Vinda. Yes, the data sources that I use for the research was academic guidance, documents, pedoman academics, and syllabi, course outline, from the lectures, teaching, cross-cultural understanding, and also argumentative writing. Next, Mbak Vinda. I use some of interdisciplinary post-colonial and post-structural analytical framework. First is Foucauldian discourse analysis, which focus primarily on subjectivity, and the second is the Southern theory. Southern theory is a critical sociology written by Raymond Connell, from professor from the University of Sydney, who challenged the Western dominance. The Western dominance means here Europe and North America, and also its critique. Basically, Southern theory promotes the idea of multi-centered social science. So Raymond Connell wants to promote that social science need to be democratic, not only dominated by the West, by the global North, the phrase that she used in her book, and also the use of certain, social and cultural context to shape knowledge production. Connell also criticize the current knowledge production, which is in the global North, which is Western dominated. And I also use the critic of the Southern theory. One of the critic is that even though Southern theory is very good, very maybe some will say about very utopia, but in reality, it's not always easy to apply or to enact the negotiation of power between global North and global South. Global North is usually identical with European and also North American. Global South is usually those from developing countries. So if you use Farid Al-Atta's term, it's about academic dependency, in which usually the developing countries depend much on the global North in terms of knowledge production. We can only use the theories imported from the West, and we usually cite the scholars from the West, but unfortunately, in return, sometimes usually the case is they never or they rarely cite the scholars from the South. And I also use the post-method pedagogy by Kumara Vadivelu, who is now the professor at St. Joseph University in the United States, who criticized the dominant methods, such as communicative language teaching, grammar translation method, and other important methods. Actually, I also use Islamization of knowledge, because one of the sites which I was investigating is at an Islamic university, where the Islamization of knowledge is promoted in the classroom, in daily talks. But in this analysis, I will not discuss about that Islamization of knowledge, because it focuses much on the ELT method with Englishes or argumentative writing and the dominance of inner circle Englishes. That's the variety of English, which is British and American English, the place where Bu Hasnul gained master and PhD degree there. Next, Mbak Vinda. So here is my finding. Yeah, finding the construction of ELT method. When I use the word ELT method with the big M, the capital letters M, it refers to the dominant ELT method imported from the West, such as communicative language teaching, grammar translation method, and so on. When I use methods, it is the lecturers or teachers' own methods, which does not have to be inspired by or shaped by the dominant ELT methods. So here are the findings. The absence of the prescribed ELT methods in the national policies and curriculum documents of the two universities. So when I was investigating this ELT method, I was thinking that because for example, in SMA or tertiary, in SMP, junior high school or senior high school, usually the ELT methods or is mentioned explicitly. Unfortunately, that does not happen at the university levels. The method was not even mentioned. But what I found is, because I was investigating argumentative writing and cross-cultural understanding course, in argumentative writing course, I found a traditional approach to teaching argumentative writing, characterized by the process and genre approach. You know, when we discuss a process, we usually find you know, drafting, revising, and then editing, and that stuff. That's called process approach to teaching writing. And the genre approach is really characterized by you know, thesis, introductory paragraph, body paragraph, and concluding paragraph. And also we have thesis statement followed by 2 or 3 paragraph, and then the closing. And that's typical of argumentative writing genre, is similar to what has been written by Professor Ken Hyland from the university from the University of East Anglia in UK. And that is really identically related to the teaching of argumentative writing. Now, what I found in the conception of cross-cultural understanding, inner circle dominance. Inner circles means British English and American English and Australian English are dominant at EU and Islamic University, shaping the materials in the curriculum, in the course outline. But inter-ethnic cultures written or are constituted or are constructed in the curriculum document of multi-religious universities. So in the point where cross-cultural understanding at Islamic University, cross-cultural understanding is understood in terms of how to compare our culture with the dominant culture of British and American and Australian. But the understanding of cross-cultural understanding at the at multi-religious university is different. Cross-cultural understanding is understood in terms of inter-ethnic cultures. So if we discuss about inter-ethnic cultures, it can be, you know, from Sunda to Madura or Balinese or Acehese. That's kind of inter-ethnic cultures, and that's really deconstruct the dominant meaning of cross-cultural understanding so far, which was, you know, dominated by the imported Western concept of cross-cultural understanding. Then finally, I should say that even though Revin Connell promoted the democratic knowledge of knowledge production, multi-centered social science, but in practice, the negotiation of power between global North, United States, European, in South Asians, is only possible in a particular ELT context, English language teaching context. In this case, my finding shows that in cross-cultural understanding at Islamic University, argumentative writing in both Islamic University and multi-religious university, the Western concepts are so dominant. The only possible negotiation of power in terms of, you know, in the classroom is in cross-cultural understanding course at a multi-religious university. So this finding resonates with the Collins argument that negotiation of power so far, even though there are so many critics addressed to Western, European, and many activists of ELT also criticize that, for example, like Kanagaraja, Kumarafaidul value, but the fact that that negotiation of power, you know, can work only in some context. Next, Mbak Vinda. And here's my conclusion. I argue that after completing my dissertation and completing this chapter, I argue that there is a need for more plurilingual approach in English curriculum policy into Indonesian universities. Why? Because it does not create democratic knowledge production. When we, teaching and learning in the classroom, because we are a multicultural and multilingual country, it is, for me, much more makes sense if we apply plurilingual approach rather than monolingual approach, which valorize native speakerism and imported ELT method and so forth. And this time now is gaining momentum. Multilingual turn is happening now, marked by the book written by Stephen May, one of the professors at the University of Auckland, and also the edited book that I contributed chapter in, Policy Development in TESOL and Multilingualism, is the real example that multilingualism, multilingual approach, plurilingual approach really is gaining momentum now to be applied in ELT classroom in the Indonesian context. Next, Mbak Vinda. And here comes my chapter. If you are interested, I can send the copy of my chapter to you. Just send me an email. An email is available in the first slide of my presentation. So if you're interested to read further this chapter, I can send it to you. Thank you very much. I'm waiting for the question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Yudi, for the great explanation related to the teaching English method and teaching English. And now, for the audience, if you have the question for the presenter, both Bu Hasnul or Pak Ribut Wahyudi, you may write your question via chat room, or you may ask the question directly today. And for the first session, I will give 3 questions. I will give 3 chances for the question for the audience. Okay, please, the audience. Is there any questions? Okay. It seems that there hasn't been a question via the chat room. Pak Ribut, I think the reconstruction of the teaching method in Indonesian, especially in Indonesian. So the subject of the study are the students that come from Islamic universities and the general universities.
Yes, multi-religious university, but the respondent of my research, the lecturers teaching argumentative writing and cross-cultural understanding to Lily. Lecturers, not the students.
It is specifically in the writing teaching process.
The lecturers teaching argumentative writing course, and there are 2 courses that I was investigating. The first was the lecturers teaching argumentative writing course, and the second was the lecturers teaching cross-cultural understanding courses. Yes, to different universities.
Okay, so today the audience is especially from the Islamic University.
Yes.
For the audience, is there any questions related to the discussion?
There is a question here, Bu Lili. Bu Lili, a question for me actually. For Pak Ribut, what do you mean by multi-religious university? Because even in Islamic university, the religion of the students are various. What I understand in my university, the students are only Muslims. So I assume that the Islamic university only, has Muslim students. But multi-religious university means kampus umum, kampus umum, which is under Kemendikbud, not under Kemenak. That's a multi-religious university because the students are more diverse. They are from, they can be Muslim, they can be Christian, they can be Hindu, and so on and so forth. That's what I meant by multi-religious university, kampus umum. Because sometimes people use the word secular universities, which I do not agree with. The word secular universities means usually in the West is religion is not taught in the university. Jadi agama tidak diajarkan kalau di kampus barat itu, makanya namanya kampus sekuler gitu. But in Indonesian context, whatever the university, religion is offered there. So therefore, I use the word multi-religious university, where the students and the lecturers as well come from diverse backgrounds. That's for Mbak or Bu Isna. That's my explanation, Bu Lili.
Okay. Okay. The next, there are two more questions on the audience. Okay. Okay. In fact, I myself is interested in the ecological approach proposed by Pak Ribut Wahyudi. Maybe Pak Ribut can explain.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Lili, for your interest in my presentation. And usually when I use the word ecological approach, I refer to because as you know, as I have sent the files to you, I refer to Philipson and Skutnap Kangas when they use the word ecology. Ecology means one language does not have to dominate other languages. For example, the use of English only in the classroom could hamper, could dominate, could provide harm for the national and local languages. What I support so far, there have been big names in the field, like what I have mentioned, Stephen May, Professor Stephen May from University of Auckland, also Professor Sores Kanagaraja from Pennsylvania State University, Kumarafa Develo from St. Joe's State University. Those are the big names. And also Professor Robert Philipson from, in the past, from Copenhagen Business School at Sweden or Norwegian, I do not know exactly. They promoted that even though the teaching of English in the classroom, the national and the local languages can be used at the same time when we are teaching English. So not only teaching English. Some people will not agree, of course. That's no problem. That's an academic forum. Debate can be pro and cons. But the current literature is multilingual, multilingual turn in this all, where the teaching of English the use of national and local languages can be used in addition to English, which is used in the classroom. That's what I call ecology. Indonesian and local languages can also be used to strengthen student understanding toward the material in the classroom. Not only English is used in the classroom. Jadi yang sekarang begitu. The current dominant so far, we are preached, we are taught, we are, indoctrinate that we should use only English in the classroom. No. Most critical scholars so far protest that because that will not provide a space for local and socio-cultural context to be used in the classroom. That's the way. That's basically what I mean by ecological approach. So English should be positioned in equally within, the use of other languages such as Indonesian and local languages. But usually this is, if I can suggest, this is can be used at the 5th semester, 6th semester. Because sometimes when students enter the English department, they first need to be taught about phonology, basic academic writing. If we introduce at the earlier level, then at least first they need to be taught, the dominant, and later on we need to introduce them the critical stream to disrupt or to deconstruct their understanding. This is one of the examples, Bu Lily and maybe other colleagues. The teaching of argumentative writing so far is very Western dominated. The question is it wrong? No, I don't say that this is wrong, but what I want is the teaching of argumentative writing, the Western style, need to be taught in addition to academic argumentative writing from the, for example, Asian style. Is there any? Yes, there is an example of argumentative writing. One of them is written by Yamuna Kachru, I think, in 2009. Jadi argumentative writing itu selama ini Western product. That's not wrong, but that needs to be thought in addition to. It has to be given equal space. Jangan sampai pengajaran bahasa argumentative writing itu menghapuskan tradisi retorik dari komunitas negara lain gitu maksud saya. That's what Rewin Connell calls democratic knowledge production. Jadi harus lebih yang diajarkan itu jangan satu style. Gitu. Ini aliran-aliran postkolonial yang semangatnya sama dengan Bu Hasnul tadi itu suka protes. Ini protes itu. Right.
Yeah. Okay. On the audience, is there any response to what the explanation given by Pak Ribut Wahyudi? So, I think the explanation will attract many responses. Pak Ribut.
Yes.
Have you investigated the effectivity of this approach in the teaching of argumentative writing?
I don't know. I, in the past, should acknowledge that in the past, when I completed my master, when I came back from Sydney and then teaching also argumentative writing, I thought exactly the same way with my former respondents, teaching Western dominance approach. But because later on in my PhD, I was really inspired by post-colonial and post-structural approach, I think my intellectual motivation says that it's not right, it's not democratic. We need to introduce Western concept, yes, Western rhetoric, no problem, as form of knowledge, but we need also to introduce other forms of rhetoric as introduced by culture from Indian context. So what is interesting is then writing in the way that Indian write in argumentative writing is much similar to what an Indonesian write. So that's like circular, you see. Jadi lebih, kalau the Western one is straight to the point, there is thesis statement, supporting details, something like that. But the Asian one is a more circular.
Yeah.
The question, is that the problem? I would not say that's a problem. That's a different culture, shaping different way of thinking and writing. And I would appreciate that the Western one might be appropriate in writing thesis, but the Asian one might be more appropriate to write a novel. Okay? Jadi tradisi retorik yang lain itu juga masih berguna dan bermanfaat. Coba bayangkan kalau menulis novel misalnya to the point, itu kan tidak layak disebut novel. There is no element of surprise like what usually the Asians way of writing or doing things.
Yeah.
That's Lily. Yes.
There is question for Pak Ribut.
Yeah.
Pak Mahirza Putra Aulia.
Yes. Is it crucial to bring Indonesian discourse to English-based major? I have a friend who brings this regional culture manifest in his thesis. Thank you. Is it crucial? Depending of the political stance, political position that Pak Mahirza or other people should have. For me, yes, it's crucial. It's really important. The question is how we can promote our own culture and language if we do not discuss it in the classroom. How we can separate our social and cultural context from the students' way of learning, student knowledge. We cannot do that in my opinion. But other people will say from the dominant, from the mainstream, it's not important. Jadi ini masalah menurut saya, if I use Indonesian, that means that doesn't mean that I have no word to say in English. No, that's intentional. Kalau saya ngomong pakai bahasa Indonesia campur bahasa Inggris, that's translanguaging pedagogy as promoted by Ofelia Garcia, Professor Ofelia Garcia and Li Wei, the Dean of the Dean of Faculty of Education at University of College London has written extensively on translanguaging, and that's perfectly legitimate to say that. Jadi ini masalah keberpihakan saja. Jadi kalau Bapak misalnya, Bapak Mahirza itu berpihak pada dominan monolingual paradigm, ya saya salah. Saya pasti disalahkan. Tapi kalau Bapak berpihak pada aliran multilingual turn in TESOL, maka saya ada di gerbong di sana. Bersama siapa? Bersama Profesor Li Wei, Profesor Suresh Kanagaraja, Profesor Kumara Fadivelu, and that's perfectly legitimate. Dan itu saya juga tidak hanya berkata, tetapi sudah menulis banyak yang itu terbit di center discourses di European and American, biar orang-orang sana itu dengar juga gitu. Apa yang saya tulis itu kan dari kelas gitu ya, dari kelas dari UIN Malang, dari Pasuruan, dari Jawa Timur. Ini loh, menurut saya tanggung jawab intelektual kita harus sampai di sana gitu untuk mempromosikan seperti itu. Saya cerita tentang Jawa, saya cerita tentang Madura. Ya bagaimana kita pinter-pinternya membagi materi dari barat dan materi dari lokal itu untuk kita diskusikan secara kritis. Begitu Pak Mahirza. The second question is for Bu Hasnul. Time is yours, Bu Hasnul.
Yeah, thanks Pak Ribut. The same ya. The same resistance from post-colonial perspective. Yeah, I agree with all your argument, yeah, Pak Ribut. And this is question, how do you see the novel depict about Muslim regarding 9/11 incident from Tuti Handayani? Thank you, yeah, Ms. Tuti. I think in the novel I described before that how Muslim Muslims are depicted in the novel. Yeah, of course, as we know that Muslims tend to be represented as marginalized, as oppressed. In this case, Salwa, the protagonist, is assaulted by extremist America, and also Jassim is interrogated and also accused by the highest institution, US, the FBI. So this is, I argue that in order to question, to challenge, to resist this discrimination and oppression, so the writer here, Laila Halabi, uses the predominant narrative of US trauma. So trauma so far only related with the US trauma centric instead of Muslim. In this case, how the protagonists are depicted as also facing some trauma. In this case, Salwa has been assaulted and also has miscarriage, and so this is how to question the US trauma-centric narrative in 9/11 novels. And for the second question, do Americans think Osama bin Laden is the representation of Muslim in global? Well, in my humble opinion, mostly yes, because the way of the US media tend to represent this 9/11 attack, and also as we know that how in the ground zero also built to to memorize the 9/11 attack. So when I visited New York and I came to this ground zero monument, so I feel sad because the way they show the movie or the film documentary, so they mentioned that this is the way Islam or Muslim attack these Twin Towers. So they don't mention that it's radical, let's say Al-Qaeda or the specific group, but just mention in general Muslim. So this is the way the media, US media represent or mention Muslim. So of course it will make in generalization. So I think that's all. Thank you. So I have a question for Ms. Hasnur. Is it possible that the fall of Afghanistan by Taliban can be a significant discourse to challenge towards Western imperialism? The fall of Afghanistan by Taliban can be significant discourse to challenge toward Western imperialism. It's really political questions, so I'm afraid that okay, then I just try to answer from my humble perspective. Some books that I read that this is argument, very arguable. So they say that the Taliban was created by the US in order to blah, 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 and in order to expand US military in Afghanistan. And now they, they destroyed the Taliban again. So somehow I agree with the statement. And if to answer your question, maybe we can say, how can we say that this is to challenge Western imperialism? In fact, the Western itself built it in Afghanistan. So this is really, debatable question and answer. I think that's all. Ya, Bu Lili. Atau kita foto bersama aja dulu ya sambil nunggu question. Smile.
Okay. The question from Pak Mahirza is the last question for our academic forum today. And Thank you very much for the